Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. If you're as much of a masochist as I am and have been tuning into the clown show that we call Question Period, you may have noticed how Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre, has started saying things like, "Why doesn't Justin Trudeau have the courage to answer me on these questions?" And he's doing this very specifically, and he's also doing this on days when the Prime Minister is not actually present. Most of the time. He has also done it when, outside of the Leaders' Round, when the Prime Minister has finished and is getting ready to leave, because that is what happens on days that aren't Wednesdays under the current Prime Minister. But it's a very deliberate strategy. It's one that Andrew Scheer actually pioneered a couple of times when he was opposition leader, and when the Prime Minister wasn't present, he would go on. He had this whole scripted affair where he knew the Prime Minister wasn't there that day, and so he went on this whole thing about, "Why isn't the Prime Minister answering me? Why are you hiding behind your ministers?" And it's a very deliberate strategy, which then wound up on videos that weekend where he's like, the Prime Minister doesn't have the courage to answer the questions, or he's too afraid to answer me, or these kinds of things, when the Prime Minister was not in the room. And Poilievre is doing the same kinds of thing because the strategy is around creating these video clips. The question often gets asked, though, is why can't anyone say that the Prime Minister is not actually here today? And that actually goes into the rules around debate. If you look at the rules and procedures for the House of Commons, on Chapter 13, Rules of Order and Decorum, and it's right up near the top when it talks about references to members. Second paragraph, the Speaker will not allow a member to refer to another member. Third paragraph. Allusions to the presence or absence of a member or minister in the chamber are unacceptable. Speakers have upheld this prohibition on the grounds that there are many places that members have to be in order to carry out all of their obligations that go with their office. And so that's what Poilievre and Andrew Scheer before him are playing on, is that they are pretending the Prime Minister is there, and when he's not and they're trying to call him out, the government benches can't say that you are actually, or, he's not here, so why are you doing this? Because if they do that, then they break the rules. But Scheer and Poilievre in particular are trying to be a little too clever by half by pretending that he's there when he's not, in order to create this false image. Now, if we had a competent speaker, he would probably say something to the effect of, members are not allowed to do indirectly what they can't do directly, which means that they can't call attention to the absence of the Prime Minister indirectly, which is sort of what they're doing if you take a very particular hardline look at the tactics that they're using. It could also, if we had the CPAC, who runs the cameras in the House of Commons, if they were not so focused on this particular view, what they think of themselves as editorially neutral, they could pan to show that to the front bench to see that the Prime Minister isn't there. But they won't do that because they're afraid of getting complaints that doing so would make them look like they're injecting bias into the debate, which is not an argument that I have any particular time for, because the UK can do it with no problem at all. But the editors who run CPAC in Canada are, I'm going to say, spineless, because they're afraid of getting complaints from MPs if they pan around and do so, even though in the early first few televised debates that we did have, they actually had reaction shots and wide shots and reverse pans and all these kinds of things that injected some drama into not only the debate, but also gave you a sense of what the back and forth is actually like, instead of just a tight shot on the person speaking. And I think that's a problem, because it's allowed members in our house to manipulate the perceptions of what is going on by playing to what they know is in the camera. I mean, that's why on particularly Fridays, but on other days, you will see a game of musical chairs being played, so that they've got a speaking list for who's coming up, and they will move members around in order to fill the camera shot around them, so it looks like the house is always full, even though it's not actually always full. It's especially egregious during regular debate outside of question period, when House duty is generally about 20-25 people in the chamber at any given time, given that quorum is 20. And other MPs are elsewhere doing things like committee duty. They do not all sit in the chamber for the entire day for what is usually second reading debate of bills. So that's kind of what is happening in terms of why Poilievre is doing this. These are some solutions. If we had a speaker or editors at CPAC who would be willing to actually showcase or just show that what is being shown is manipulation of the camera and of the situation in order to create a narrative, one which is false and misleading, and they could call that out if they really wanted to. But unfortunately, we're in this position right now where we have a speaker who is not interested, who would rather be everyone's friend than in both enforcing the rules and decorum, and also in enforcing the dignity of Parliament, which is a problem. But that's kind of the place in which we're at. And it's one of these things where we should be having MPs really ask themselves, is this what we really want Parliament to become? Because it's a problem. It's a problem for our democracy, and it's a problem for how we engage with that democracy. And if it's going to be just a matter of harvesting clips for misleading ads on social media, then why are we, then what's the whole point? That's an existential problem that we really should be asking ourselves. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.